You opened YouTube with a specific video in mind. You found it, you watched it, and then something happened that you didn't decide to let happen. Another video started, and then another. And 40 minutes later, you were watching something you never searched for, never asked for, and couldn't entirely explain how you arrived at. You're not alone. This exact sequence happens billions of times every single day. And in 2026, active lawsuits in California courts are arguing that the feature making it happen was specifically and deliberately engineered to prevent you from stopping. That feature is turned on by default on your account right now. And the families suing YouTube over it are asking for the same thing this video is going to show you how to do in the next 10 minutes. Let's start with what actually happens inside your phone when a YouTube video ends. The video finishes. A countdown timer appears on screen, typically somewhere between 3 and 10 seconds. And unless you actively intervene, the next video begins automatically. This process is called autoplay, and it seems innocuous enough on the surface. YouTube suggests something it thinks you'll enjoy. The clock runs out, the video starts. You can always pause it, find something else, go do whatever you were originally planning to do before you ended up on YouTube in the first place. The design presents this as a convenience feature. And that's precisely the problem with how most people think about it, because the research published in 2026 describes something considerably more calculated than convenience. A peer-reviewed study published in the journal Neuroscience in July 2026 found that watching preferred short-form videos, the kind YouTube's algorithm excels at serving in sequence, temporarily suppresses the brain's two primary self-control regions below their resting baseline, not to their normal resting level, below it. The brain regions responsible for evaluating whether you should continue doing what you're doing, the prefrontal cortex structures that handle impulse control and long-term decision-making, are measurably less active after a session of algorithm-served videos than they were before that session started. The study also found that resting glutamate levels, a neurochemical marker, predict how vulnerable any individual viewer is to this effect. Some people are structurally more susceptible to the suppression than others, and those people are identifiable by measurable brain chemistry. Read that again. The vulnerability is biological, and the content delivery system is, by design, agnostic to it. YouTube's algorithm optimizes for engagement without any distinction between users who can easily close the app and users whose neurological response to the content makes closing it genuinely difficult. This is why the lawsuits exist. In 2026, active litigation in California courts is targeting YouTube, among other platforms, with allegations that autoplay videos, constant notifications, infinite scroll, and recommendation algorithms have led to measurable harm, including depression, self-harm, and other documented mental health consequences, particularly in younger users. The families who have filed these cases are seeking financial damages. They're also asking courts to compel changes to how these apps are designed. This isn't fringe advocacy. The European Union is simultaneously moving toward regulatory enforcement of the same concern. The Digital Fairness Act, announced by the EU Commission in May 2025, and with a formal legislative proposal expected in 2026, is specifically designed to mandate controls over exactly these features, autoplay and algorithmic recommendation systems, which the Commission's own analysis describes as engineered to keep users glued to their screens by exploiting behavioral psychology. The European Commission already made preliminary findings in February 2026 that a competing platform was in breach of Digital Services Act obligations, specifically for failing to mitigate addictive design. The specific mechanisms cited in that finding were the same ones operating right now on your YouTube account. Here's the psychological mechanism that makes autoplay specifically more harmful than simply having a lot of content available. Behavioral psychologists have a term for the design principle, choice architecture. When a decision is structured so that one option requires active effort and the other happens passively by default, the passive option wins the overwhelming majority of the time, not because it's a better choice, but because it requires less friction. YouTube's autoplay is built around this principle explicitly. When a video ends, stopping requires action. Continuing requires nothing. You have to tap, swipe, navigate, or physically put down the phone to break the session. Continuing requires you to do absolutely nothing at all. And because the next video is specifically selected by an algorithm that knows your preferences, your mood patterns, your engagement history, and your neurological reward responses across billions of data points, the content that starts automatically is rarely something that fails to catch your attention. The algorithm has had years of data to understand precisely what will make you stay. It is, in the Canadian Centre for Addictions language, delivering variable rewards, the same psychological mechanism at work in slot machines, where the inconsistency of what you receive maintains engagement more powerfully than consistent quality would. The 2026 version of this problem is actually more complex than the simple autoplay next video toggle because YouTube's design team hasn't stood still. Beyond the standard consecutive video autoplay, there is now feed preview autoplay, which begins playing muted video content as you scroll through the homepage before you've tapped on anything at all. You haven't chosen a video. You haven't decided to watch something. You're browsing and the feed is already playing, already presenting motion and content that activates the same attention systems the algorithm has spent years calibrating to your specific profile. And then there's Shorts autoplay, which loops short-form vertical content endlessly. Unlike longer videos, which have a clear endpoint and a natural pause moment where a viewer might choose to stop, Shorts by design have no endpoint. The loop is continuous. The only way to experience a stopping moment in a short session is to consciously create one. And the neuroscience research published this year is specifically connecting this format to self-control suppression in ways that make the autonomous creation of stopping points particularly difficult for a significant proportion of viewers. So let's turn autoplay off. This is the single most impactful change available to any YouTube user, and the process has changed slightly in 2026 due to updates to the app's interface, so the path you might remember from a year ago may no longer be where the setting lives. In the YouTube mobile app as of 2026, tap your profile icon, which in the current layout appears labeled in the bottom right corner. From there, go to Settings, then Playback. Inside the Playback menu, you'll find the Autoplay Next Video toggle. Switch it off. For the video level toggle that appears while you're watching a video, look at the top of the player for a pill-shaped switch with a play icon inside it. If the switch is positioned to the right, showing a play symbol, autoplay is active, tap it to move it left, and a brief pause icon will appear confirming the change. On desktop, the same toggle appears near the video player and can also be managed from account settings. The important thing to understand about this change is what it actually does to your experience. Every subsequent video now requires a deliberate choice. You have to select the next thing you want to watch. The passive continuation is gone. Sessions now end when you want them to end rather than when you happen to notice how much time has passed. But autoplay being off doesn't mean YouTube stops shaping what you see and building profiles about you based on what you watch. The second setting on this list is less about stopping a specific behavior and more about understanding and then controlling something that most YouTube users have never consciously thought about. Watch history and what it actually represents in terms of data about your life. Every video you've ever watched on YouTube while logged into your Google account is stored in a record that YouTube and Google use to build and continuously refine a behavioral profile connected to your verified identity. Not a device ID, not a cookie that expires. Your actual Google account, the one tied to your name, your email, your phone number, your Google Pay information, and every other Google service you use. The profile built from your YouTube watch history extends beyond YouTube itself. Your viewing habits on YouTube contribute directly to the advertising profile Google maintains about you across all of its products, which, as of 2025, covers an estimated 92% of all internet users globally, according to Consumer Reports privacy analysis. What you watch on YouTube influences what ads you see in Google search. What you watch influences what ads appear alongside your Gmail messages. What you watch is part of the behavioral fingerprint that Google's system uses to predict your interests, your demographics, your income range, your health concerns, and in one documented research finding, your anxiety disorder status, predicted with 71% accuracy purely from search and viewing patterns. Consumer Reports 2025 privacy analysis contains a finding that genuinely changes how you should think about YouTube's privacy settings. Google's privacy controls affect data sharing between platforms, not data collection itself. Let that sit for a moment. When you adjust a setting, what you're usually changing is what Google does with the data, not whether the data gets collected. The profiling continues. The monitoring continues. What changes is which specific manifestation of that profiling gets turned on. This is important context because it means there's a meaningful difference between adjusting the advertising settings and actually pausing the watch history collection itself. Pausing watch history is one of the more structurally impactful things you can do because it stops the accumulation of new viewing data into the profile, not just how that profile is used afterward. Here's what happens when you pause. Watch history that most people don't know in advance. YouTube's recommendation algorithm changes fundamentally. YouTube's own announcement, when it updated how history off behavior works, stated that users who turn off watch history will see a homepage without algorithmic video suggestions. Instead of a feed engineered from your behavioral data, you get a clean page with a search bar, your subscriptions, and your library. No rabbit holes, no algorithmically selected, you might also like content. The feed that is specifically designed to exploit the patterns in your history simply stops operating because it has no history to operate from. Related video suggestions still appear alongside videos you actively open and play, but the homepage level behavioral targeting disappears. Many people who have made this change describe the resulting experience as unexpectedly peaceful, as if the low-grade urgency that characterized their previous YouTube browsing had quietly lifted. To pause. Watch history, open your Google account settings rather than YouTube's in-app settings, because the most complete version of this control lives at the account level. Navigate to Data and Privacy in the left sidebar of your Google account. Scroll to History settings and find YouTube history. Select it and choose Turn Off, then confirm by selecting Pause in the prompt that appears. While you're in this same location, you'll notice there's an auto-delete option that appears even when history is being tracked. If you don't want to turn off watch history entirely, but want to limit how much historical data accumulates, setting the auto. Delete period to 3 months means only your most recent viewing informs recommendations, rather than years of behavioral data that includes things you searched for when you were going through a medical concern, a relationship difficulty, a professional crisis, or any other personal situation that you didn't necessarily want to be permanently preserved in a corporate database. Now, let's address something that most YouTube users have actively thought about but don't realize they can meaningfully change: the advertising. YouTube serves ads. That's the fundamental economic reality of the platform, and turning off personalized ads doesn't make the ads disappear. What turning off personalized ads does is change which ads you see, from advertisements specifically selected using your behavioral profile, your demographics, your inferred interests, your location history, and your viewing patterns, to contextual advertisements selected based on what's on screen in that specific moment, rather than what Google has learned about who you are over years of data collection. The distinction matters for several reasons. Contextually targeted ads are less invasive by design because they don't require knowing anything specific about you as an individual. They require knowing what video you're currently watching, which the platform knows regardless because that's inherent to the service working. And for users who have genuine concerns about specific sensitive interests appearing in their advertising profile, medical topics, legal situations, relationship challenges, financial difficulties, turning off personalized ads removes the mechanism that transforms those sensitive interests into the permanent data points that follow you across every Google surface you touch. To turn off personalized ads specifically within YouTube, open the YouTube app, go to your profile, find Privacy in the settings, and navigate to My Ad Center. The toggle to switch personalized ads off is there. When you disable it, Google will confirm that you'll continue seeing ads, but they'll no longer be based on your account activity. There's one more category of YouTube's settings that belongs in this conversation because it doesn't involve data collection at all, but is specifically designed to bring you back to the app when you've left it: notifications. YouTube sends push notifications by default for uploads from channels you've subscribed to, community posts from creators, and critically, recommended videos from channels you have never subscribed to. That last category deserves particular attention because it means YouTube's notification system is not simply an alert service for the content you've consciously chosen to follow. It's a re-engagement mechanism that uses your behavioral data to identify content you didn't ask to be alerted about, but that the algorithm predicts will catch your attention. An unrequested notification about a video from a channel you don't follow. Arriving on your phone when you've been away from YouTube for several hours is a tool specifically designed to interrupt whatever you're doing and return you to the platform's attention economy. Managing this is straightforward but requires being specific about what you turn off. In the YouTube app, navigate to your profile, then Settings, then Notifications. The category you want to specifically address is Recommended Videos, which controls the unrequested re-engagement notifications. Turning this off while keeping your subscriptions notifications active means you still hear from the channels you've consciously chosen to follow, but YouTube can no longer interrupt your day to suggest content you never asked about. On the phone level, on both iPhone and Android, the phone's own notification settings for the YouTube app allow you to further restrict badge counts and lock screen notifications, which removes YouTube's ability to place visual reminders on your home screen between app sessions. Let's take a step back from the individual settings and address the broader question that this video is really about, because turning off autoplay and watch history and personalized ads doesn't resolve the fundamental issue that the research in 2026 is consistently pointing toward. The issue is the design philosophy of the platform itself, which is built around maximizing engagement time, not around helping you watch what you came to watch and then go do something else. The recommendation algorithm's goal, stated in every honest description of how YouTube's system operates, is to predict what you will watch next and serve it. Not what is best for you, not what is most accurate or most educational or most aligned with your actual intentions when you open the app, what you will watch. And what you will watch is determined by the same behavioral data that autoplay and watch history feed into, which is why the settings in this video are most effective when they work together. Biology Insight's 2026 research summary on YouTube and mental health states the practical guidance clearly. Turning off autoplay, so each video requires a conscious decision using the search bar instead of the home page, which is engineered to pull you into browsing, and setting time limits through your phone's built-in screen time tools gives you concrete reminders rather than relying on willpower. These three adjustments together address the three distinct mechanisms through which passive YouTube sessions extend beyond the viewer's original intention: the automatic continuation of content, the algorithmically curated browsing experience that prompts you into sessions you didn't plan to start, and the absence of natural stopping points in a design that has specifically removed them. A secondary benefit of these settings changes that most discussions overlook is the data consumption and battery impact of autoplay's 2026 scope. The feed preview autoplay that loads muted video content as you scroll through the home page is running continuously every time you open the app, loading video data before you've expressed any interest in watching it. On a mobile data connection, this invisible video loading contributes to monthly data consumption without producing any value to the user. On battery, the continuous video loading and rendering from feed previews keeps the processor and display in active states that would otherwise power down. Switching YouTube to a reduced data usage mode, found under settings and then data saving within the app, stops feed preview playback, and additionally reduces streaming quality when on mobile data, which produces a meaningful reduction in both data usage and battery consumption without affecting the quality of videos you actually choose to play. Here's what the practical reality of having these settings adjusted actually looks like day to day, because this is important context for understanding why the changes in this video are worth the 10 minutes it takes to make them. With autoplay off, watch history paused, personalized ads disabled, and recommended video notifications turned off, YouTube becomes a different kind of tool. It becomes a service you use intentionally rather than a feed you browse by default. When you open the app, you'll see your subscriptions in the search bar rather than a home page full of algorithmically predicted content. When a video ends, the session ends unless you choose something else to watch. When you put your phone down, YouTube can no longer send you a notification about a video you never asked to be told about. The app works for the purpose you actually use it for, discovering and watching specific content, rather than for the additional purpose its designers built in, which is to maximize the total time you spend there regardless of whether you intended to spend that much time. The EU's regulatory movement in 2026 toward mandating controls over these specific features tells you something important about how the broader society is evaluating the design choices described in this video. The Digital Fairness Act that the EU Commission is preparing would essentially make certain elements of these settings changes mandatory by law for platforms operating in Europe, because the assessment of policymakers, informed by the same research literature cited in this video, is that these design features have produced measurable harm at population scale. The California addiction lawsuits make the same assessment in the language of personal injury law rather than consumer protection regulation. The neuroimage research on self-control suppression makes the same assessment in the language of neuroscience. The convergence of legal proceedings, regulatory action, and peer-reviewed research all pointing at the same features, the same design choices, the same settings you can change on your phone right now is not coincidental. It's a description of what is being documented about the relationship between these specific platform features and the well-being of the people using them. None of the changes described in this video require you to use YouTube differently in any way that disrupts the things you actually use YouTube for. You can still find any video by searching. You can still see everything your subscribed channels upload. You can still share, comment, and engage with content exactly as before. What you won't be doing is being kept on the platform beyond the time you intended to spend there by a system specifically engineered to make leaving harder than staying. You won't be accumulating years of viewing data into a behavioral profile that shapes how you're targeted across every surface Google operates. You won't be receiving invitations to return to the app from an algorithm that has learned your attention patterns well enough to know what kind of content to surface when you've been away for a while. The settings menu on YouTube is where the platform discloses quietly and without prominent explanation that you have the ability to change the default configuration that serves the platform's engagement goals rather than your own. Most users never open it. The defaults remain. The sessions continue longer than intended. The profile grows. The algorithm learns. And the design that active lawsuits are calling engineered for addiction continues operating exactly as designed until the moment someone makes the specific changes that this video has spent the past several minutes walking you through in precise detail. Open your app, go to your profile, find the playback settings, turn autoplay off, then navigate to your Google account, find YouTube history, and pause it. The 10 minutes this takes is, according to everything the research and the lawyers and the regulators are saying in 2026, considerably more valuable than what was going to happen to those 10 minutes if you'd left the settings where they were.